Are you so focused on the needs of the business that you're neglecting your own career growth? If so, you are not alone. Many women in particular prioritize the needs of others above their own. This week, I'm talking with Marja Wagenaar, a leadership specialist, former member of the Netherlands Parliament, and author of the Leadership Book for Women. Here we talk about the ways in which we hold ourselves back, such as not promoting our work, hesitating to take on new challenges, and focusing too heavily on being a, quote, good girl. We also explore her 50-50 method, which she designed to break these habits and help us more confidently and effectively advance our careers. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Marja. It's such a pleasure to meet you. I'm excited for our conversation today, and I would love to start by inviting you to introduce yourself.
Well, Kim, many thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here on your podcast. I'm Marja Wagenaar. I'm from the Netherlands in Europe, and I work as a leadership coach and a leadership consultant. But before that, I have come a long way. During my studies, I also already worked as a staff member to a member of parliament in the Netherlands, started writing books about politics, and I became a member of parliament myself in the Netherlands in, what was it? Do I know? Yes, 1997. So in the last age, long time ago. I love the work in politics, but after politics, I decided on a completely different career. I didn't want to do anything anymore in the public sphere, because if you want to change something in the public sphere, you need to be in politics. So I went to the private sector and started out as a consultant, as a strategy consultant. And as a very classical one, and the more I did work as a strategy consultant, I became interested in the how, in the people part, because you can have great concepts and great strategies, but it's all about the what, but the how is what makes it happen. So I started to focus on the how in my consultancy, and then also I started to do some coaching. And then I learned while doing that in my coaching practice that men and women do take a very different approach to their work and to their jobs. And then I decided, well, I need to have a method for that, to make it visible for women if they approach their job in a different manner, what they could accomplish. And that's how it all started.
That is fascinating. I would love to possibly hear more about your political career in a moment too, but I want to start where you just finished. What was it that you saw that made you think we need to be more clear, or we need to give women more support around career management? What were some of the themes that you noticed, or potentially challenges that you were seeing women struggle with?
Well, I saw women being hesitant about taking a next step. I saw women being not so self-confident as men were. And there was also a lot of research, by the way, to back that. When it comes to getting a new job, men think, oh, if I can do 60%, I'm going to do that job. And women think, oh, we need to be able to do 100%. Otherwise, they won't even apply to a new job. So that's what I found in women who wanted to move higher up on the corporate ladder, but they had a lot of hesitancies. They met them also in their surroundings. It doesn't help if people say, well, I don't know if you can do that, if you already have doubts yourself. So I started looking for a method to work with women, to stimulate them and to overcome this hesitancy.
And I think that's such a great point because I think part of it is socialization. I think, boys at young ages are taught to be more aggressive, right? And they're not necessarily as bound by the rules as girls are. Girls are taught to be obedient. We are taught to behave. We are taught to, follow the rules, and we like rules. We like knowing what's the structure that we're operating within. And I think that is a big challenge that I see, is that we get into the workplace. School works really well for that. School offers a lot of structure that makes us feel safe and makes it feel predictable. Then we get into the workplace and we try to apply those same principles, and then we see the men around us in acting in ways that feel like they're going around the system. And that feels unfair, as opposed to recognizing that is the new system, right?
Well, I think that is spot on, the thing you're mentioning. I start my book, the first chapter of my book is called Stop Being a Good Girl. We women, we try to be the good girl and follow the rules. And in my own experience, after politics, I became a vice president first in a utilities company. I did a lot of new stuff. I sold water companies. I'd never been in a water company, and all of a sudden I had to sell them. But okay, I managed that. But then the yearly figures of the company were not that good. So they said, oh, everybody needs to scrap 15% from their annual budget. And I thought, okay, I'm just setting up a new department. This is not coming at the right moment for me. But if it has to be, it has to be. So I went to the finance department with a proposal for this 15% budget cuts. And they looked at me a little bit amazed and said, oh, wow, that's great. We're going to do that. The days after, my fellow vice presidents, they started marching into my office. Not very nice, because they said, what the hell are you doing? We have this announcement for budget cuts all the time, but we don't do them. And if you start with it, then we also have to cut our budget with 15%. Crazy woman. That's probably, they didn't say crazy woman, but that's probably what they thought. So basically, that's where I learned a lot. I lost 15% of my budget, and my male colleagues, I only had male colleagues at that level, they didn't. So that's where I thought, okay, I'm never going to be a good girl again. Mm-hmm. And then I started my own business, consultancy business. I had a great clients, a huge company, a huge multinational, and I working all over the world, and they sent me everywhere to do research. But then I had to make my presentation to the boards. And on the night before that, I showed it to a fellow consultant, also a woman, and she said to me, well, this sounds a bit radical. And I thought, okay, let's tone it down a little bit, because I want to keep these clients and I want to have clients like this. So I toned it down a little bit, but luckily I had organized a dry run with some young people, young talents who were working in this company. And I thought they would love my presentation, because at least young people are into change. And they were all a little bit nude, and they thought, well, not that enthusiastic. And I thought, okay, there's something wrong with this. So I went back to my PowerPoint. I changed everything back to my initial version. I showed that PowerPoint to the board, and up until, and this is about 20 years ago, and still one of these board members is still one of my clients. They loved it. And that was also a thing where I think, okay, you have to say what you want to say, be straightforward, and keep it simple.
Mm.
And don't be a good girl. Never.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I think that is so important. And I wonder, there's in the same way that we are good girls much of the time, there's also a fear of getting in trouble. And I think that a lot of, and maybe that's tied to perfectionism, or maybe it's fear of doing something that's going to lose your job. But one of the things that I notice is that men are more comfortable pushing back. And so when you're talking about that example that you shared of, no, they ask for this all the time, we just don't do it, right? That feels like, but if I don't do it, what's going to happen? What are the consequences to that? And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how we manage the anxiety of worrying that we're breaking the rules or that we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, well, that's basically now we're getting to the core, I think. We have to manage that anxiety, and we have to take care of ourselves. Men are much better at taking care of themselves in the workplace. And what women do, they take care of the organization, but they don't take care of themselves. And now I'm getting back to my book, because my leadership book for women is based on what I devised was the 50-50 method. Mm-hmm. And the 50-50 method is a method to break this habit. It basically states, divide 50% of your time and your energy. Energy is very important. For your work towards the organization, and devote the other 50% to enhance and to further your own career goals. And when I tell that to women for the first time, they overlook and they say, no, we can't do that. Mm-hmm. And they're very much afraid that they will become like the men we all know who devote 80 or 90% of their time to, furthering their own position and not thinking about the organization or the co-workers or anything at all. But if you devote 50% of your time to your own career goals, your company has a much better employee on board, because you're very much more motivated and you can do a lot more. For example, if you think, oh, I want to learn about public relations, or I want to learn about finance because I want to do that a little bit more in my career, they can get you financial assignments. So they can, let you do lots of more assignments, which is very interesting to them. So this 50-50 thing, so I'm going to ask you a question back, if I may. Sure. It's also, for persons like you and me who have our own company, I sometimes tend to devote much time and energy to my clients, and then I'm not working on marketing, on sales, on the future of my company, on writing books, let's say about securing my own future. And so I'm going to ask you, how 50-50 are you?
That has been something I've never thought about it in these terms, but that has been something I have done very well throughout my business ownership, because I think I felt early on the pressure that if I didn't do that, I wasn't going to have a thriving business. So I would say that I can certainly do better. I am not perfect by any means, but I have definitely made sure to carve out time to take care of myself, my growth, the business growth. And otherwise, like you said before, from the motivational perspective, then I don't have any energy left to do anything else.
No, that's right. If you devote all your time to the organization you're working for, you don't have any energy left. You don't have, very important, any energy left to make your work, your successes visible. You don't have energy left to network, to work on your next assignment or your next job, your next career move, or anything. You don't have any time or energy left. And a lot of women feel frustrated because then they think, oh, my company neglects me. I do such a lot of good silent work and nobody sees it. And they feel, and they are still, looking for recognition in a very silent way. And when you're in your first job and when you're 25 and 26 and very talented, you will be noticed anyway. But from your second job on, you have to make sure yourself that you'll become noticed. Otherwise, everybody moves over your head and moves along, and you're in a standstill.
Yes, you're so right. And I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, too, about the mutual benefit, because I think sometimes this feels selfishly motivated. And what I always try to say to women is it's not selfish to want to grow your career. You're telling your employer, I want to make an even bigger impact than I'm making today. Right? I want to invest in the success of this organization by doing more. And, that's not a given in today's workplace where the people leave very quickly if they don't feel like their needs are being met. Right. And so to feel like what you're talking about too is, even though there's a certain amount of self-promotion that's going on in these conversations, you're taking a more active role in the business through the kinds of activities that you're describing, which means that you can make more informed decisions. It means you have a greater perspective on the needs of the business or different ways in which different teams interact. And that's not just going to benefit you.
No, it's a huge benefit for the business, because business, especially nowadays with Gen Z, who is moving on very quickly if they think, oh, this is not what I want, let's try somewhere else. And there it's very hard for companies to get talent and to keep talent. It's very important that you make your wishes known and think, okay, I'm going to learn finance, or I want to do, let's say, my first presentation to the boards. Can I take it there? Because you have to make yourself known. And but companies nowadays love it. And if you're in a company who doesn't love it, well, then you've been in the wrong place already for a very long time. Yes. And then you might ask yourself, is it time to move on? Because most companies nowadays, they love people who want to develop their talents. Because these talents, especially nowadays with AI and everything going on, companies need talents. So if you say, for example, okay, I have one client and she just sat down one vacation with she works in a software company, but a very traditional one. And I'm a leadership coach, and she sat down with a stack of books about AI. And now she's the AI expert of her company. And her company loves that because they didn't invest, well, not at all in AI, which they have to as a software company. She is now one of the people, and she can write about it in company time. She's now on the board of an AI organization and everything. So it works both ways. And the company, even when she doesn't have time, they write the articles for her and say, at least if we can use your name, it would be so great.
Wow.
So yes, you have to raise your hands. That's also my experience wherever I have been. If you don't raise your hands, people won't notice.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I wonder if you have thoughts for people listening who may have not gotten here yet, but want to make the shift. Because one of the things I think about too is reinventing yourself in the same organization can be challenging if people are accustomed to a certain version of you that maybe is a little bit less assertive, shall we say. And so it might feel scary to suddenly start putting in place some of the kinds of things that we're talking about. Do you have tips on maybe a first step or a way to think about doing this for the first time?
Well, doing it for the first time is not the hardest thing, I think.
Hmm.
It's keeping it up is the hard thing, the whole execution. The first step is sometimes a one-off, and then my clients sometimes they go back to their old habits. But it's really what helps is that you need to get out of your comfort zone. People sometimes, women especially, feel very comfortable within their own comfort zone, and they say, yeah, but that's just who I am. And then you have to ask yourself the question, but is that who you want to be? Is that where and who do you want to be in 5 years' time? What kind of person at work do you want to be? What kind of professional do you want to be in 5 years' time? And then I always do a kind of exercise where I say, okay, what's your old comfort zone? Mention 4 things, and let's move to the new comfort zone. And the zone between the old comfort zone and the new comfort zone is unfortunately the most uncomfortable one. So accept that you will become uncomfortable. I think that helps a lot. I call that a gray growth area because in the gray growth area, you have a lot of ups. And you think, okay, now I'm mastering it, but there will also be a lot of downs. And if you move up, slowly but surely, there will be less up and less downs. It will be less hectic, and you'll get into that new comfort zone. But get out of your comfort zone and don't think, oh, but that's who I am. That's my character, or that's how I was raised, or anything, because then you remain in your old comfort zone and nothing will change.
Yes,
And
that's
that's
such it's such an important point. And that is something that I think is really important for us to recognize, because there's a lot of rationalization that goes on in our heads to keep us feeling safe and comfortable. And so when you said earlier, that's just not who I am, I think that's an easy message to listen to and think I'm being true to myself. But your follow-up question is so important to say, is that who you want to be? Because I often think about the difference between there's a difference between doing something scary and doing something that's out of integrity. Right? So
yes, sure. Yeah, and doing something scary is important because if we do something new, we need to feel a little bit of tension. Otherwise, it's not something new. And there is another thing that will help you getting into a new comfort zone, and that is doing new things and do it consciously. Because I always tell my clients, keep a journal and keep track of all the new things you're doing in a week and in a month. And these can be very small things, tiny things, but it can also be huge things. For example, today I'm being for the first time in my life on an American podcast. Of course, that's a new thing. And I have to think, okay, talk slowly and everything. And think about if you need to find a word, because English is not my mother language, just take time to think, of course. We all need to do things that are a little bit scary, but if you keep a journal of new things and do that in a very conscious way, then your self-confidence will grow a lot. Because basically our self-confidence comes from doing and accomplishing new things. And sometimes you just have to jump into the deep end and be sure that you'll surface. Of course, we all will. And sometimes you stay under the water for 3 or 4 seconds. That's not an issue. You won't drown. And and you'll come up again. Don't worry, but do it. That's why I hate the word authentic. We have this movement about being an authentic leader and everything. And it's okay being authentic if it means, yes, it's not a show you're putting on. You mean what you say and you mean what you do. And there's really your conscience is behind it and you put everything you have in it. But being authentic as a way of keeping you from changing is not good.
Wow.
That's if you want to move on in life, in your professional life, it goes as well for your personal life, then you have to feel uncomfortable every now and then.
Ooh,
And embrace it.
that is a great point. I have my own challenges with authenticity, but I hadn't thought about it in quite that way. And I think that captures exactly what we're talking about, which is if authenticity can be a trap because if it feels
Yes.
like, oh no, I'm just being my authentic self right now, that becomes an excuse for not doing the things that we're talking about, which help you to grow. And as you said, you're not growing if you're comfortable.
No, it's an excuse for standstill. And so stop with quit the excuses, stop with them, and start feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And it will be scary in the beginning. Of course, I did a lot of scary things in my lifetime, but still, and I still do every now and then, but it helps quite a lot. Also, if you're scared of doing new things in your professional life, it helps to do new things in your personal life. For example, take on a sport you haven't been doing, or say, okay, I'm going to run for 5 miles this summer. I've never done that before. That's also a great new thing. So you know you can do new things.
Yes, I
It
think
helps.
about that a lot.
It
Yes.
helps me quite a lot. I'm almost 64 now, and I went water skiing for the first time in my life 2 years ago with a person who was 11 years old, and we both managed, and it was great. And sometimes when I have to do something scary, I look at that picture and think, yes, if you can come on a water ski at the age of, stand upright on a water ski at the age of 62, you can do this or you can do that. Of course, you'll manage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've managed already because you just said something that you've done a lot of scary things in our life. We've all done scary things. We just forget about them when we're faced with the new scary thing. And I think it's important
Yeah.
to remind ourselves we've survived every other scary thing that we have navigated. And at different points in our lives, things that come naturally to us were once scary, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we sometimes forget to celebrate.
Mhm.
Because if you celebrate, if you've done a new thing, the new thing and the fact that you are getting used to doing new things time and time again, it gets settled into your subconscious. So it becomes easier and easier. So celebrate your wins, celebrate your successes, celebrate them with your team, and celebrate the small ones, celebrate the huge ones. When I started my company, I love cooking and I love having a lot of people for dinner over at my kitchen table and everything. So I collect tableware. And I wanted to have a beautiful but very expensive silverware. And for every new client I landed when I started my business, I bought a spoon or a knife or anything. And I now have a huge, beautiful collection of silverware.
I love that.
So celebrate.
That's such a great idea. You're right. We don't spend enough time celebrating. We're so quick to pay attention to the mistakes or,
Oh,
what's not happening. And then we don't pay attention to all the good things that are going on.
yeah, no, we have to, and we over exaggerate our mistakes. When I was sitting with a client last week and I asked her, she's trying to look for a new job. She is very accomplished and working at a high level in Europe, heading a huge organization. But she now went out there and had conversations with 5 headhunters. And in one of the conversations, she didn't feel so well. I said, was that the whole conversation? No. She had 5 conversations that week and asked, how did the other conversations go? Oh, they went very well. So she started taking up our coaching time with telling me about the 10% that didn't go well instead of telling me about the 90, not 19, 90% that went very well. So focus on that and move on from there and forget about the 10%. And then we tend to stay in that part of our brain and then ruminate around and everything. And I always say to women, well, you have a wonderful brain. Use your whole brain and not only your short-term memory part where you start ruminating about your mistakes. And then you go on and you'll become hypersensitive about them instead of moving on to the long-term things and issues. You have this whole brain in your head. Start using them.
That's a really good point too. I think about it as somebody who has been prone to rumination. What I have found helpful is to not blindly go down that path, but if something's bothering me, if I'm replaying something, to ask, okay, what did I learn from this? And what went well, like you're saying, right? Because it's guaranteed that it is not the entire the entire situation that went badly. And if there is a part that I feel like I could have done better or I could have done differently, then that's something to think about from a learning perspective as opposed to a shame perspective, and say, okay, so the next time I find myself in this situation, what will I do differently?
Yeah, but that's also a thing with women. We tend to focus on, oh, I need to learn. But unlearning is also very important. We also, when we want to move on, we need to unlearn. And part of, working with this 50-50 method, spend 50% of your time working for your company, your organization, and devote the other 50% to your own personal career goals, is also about learning and about unlearning. So don't do it in your spare time or at night in your bed. If you want to ruminate, do it during your boss time and think of it as a learning or a learning issue and move on. Don't do it at night or early in the morning when you wake up early and all the adrenaline comes up and you think, oh my, now I have to get into another day. And yesterday this went wrong. No, do it during the day.
Yes, I have to catch myself because I will wake up at 2:00 in the morning and start worrying about it. And then I remind myself, there is nothing I can do about it right now. Go back to sleep. And everything feels more tolerable in the light of day.
Definitely, it definitely does. So don't, it's also a thing, then we women, we also have to learn to stimulate each other much more in that respect, because when one of us has to do, for example, a presentation to the supervisory board or to the board or anything, they have to go there and we say, well, I hope it goes well. You can also, you'll be doing great, good luck, and be a little bit more stimulating.
Yes.
Just say, you got it, girl. You got it. Yeah.
That's a great tip for all of us to think about as we're supporting each other.
Yes, we have to stop this worrying culture, which we sometimes have together as women. And of course, there's a lot to worry about in this world, and there's a lot to worry about in our lives. And we women, we feel very responsible for everything, but we can't fix a lot of things. So let's focus on the things we can fix and start with yourself. And start with, adding this 50% and carving out this 50% of your time and energy for your own goals.
This is so fantastic, Marja. I really love that approach. I think it's very simple and sustainable. I know it's going to be hard for people who haven't been doing or thinking about this yet, but I think that, just based on everything we've talked about, it is important not just to our own growth, but to our organizations, to our teams. And if we can come at it from the mindset of everybody wins when we
Yeah.
take this approach, hopefully that gives people more courage to go out and do it.
Yeah, it's win-win for everybody. And if you're a bit further with this method, then you can take the next step. The first step is most of the time a short-term issue, but and that's very important, the first step to take. But then you have to move on and work on your long-term career goals. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? It's also very interesting if you met people you haven't known yet. Don't start introducing yourself as you are now. Let's say, okay, let's say in a group of women, who are we going to be in 5 years' time? And you have a much better and much more stimulating conversation with each other.
That's a great tip too. I think that helps. I always like to think about how do we bring these kinds of conversations or this type of learning to our group, not to try to change in a vacuum, but to do it collectively, because then we all get to benefit from each other and we give permission to each other
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, we do it in a group and we have to stimulate each other. We have to help each other, stimulate each other, and lift each other up. It also means when you're moving on that you have to be willing to leave people behind you, because when you want to move ahead as a woman, it's still sometimes a bit of a lonely position. And there are people who want to keep you in your old spots. So they start pulling you down, whether it's friends, colleagues, families, because the higher up you come in the pyramids, the less peers you have. So the more lonely you become, the more lonely at least your position is you will be in, the higher up you come on the corporate ladder. And you have to remove yourself, which is sometimes hard, from people who are pulling you down, and surround yourselves with people, also female friends, who are lifting you up. I found in a lot of my female coaching clients that they are very lonely. Men, they have a lot of peers who work at the same level, and women don't have that many girlfriends who work at the same level or earn the same amount of money or have the same huge responsibilities in their job. So it becomes lonely for them. And you are the only one who can break that loneliness by moving on.
I think that's a good reminder because it is lonely at the top, as they say.
It is. It is. So you will need to surround yourself with peers, people who know how it is there, and then you can learn from each other. But if you keep surrounding yourself with people who are pulling you down all the time and say, "Oh, now you're talking about work again. Work is not important." Then because they're jealous, or you don't have anybody to talk about, you don't have anybody to talk with about your work, yeah, then you get lonely. So start surrounding yourself with the right people. That also helps a lot if you want to move forward and if you want to grow in your leadership roles.
Yes, you're absolutely
As a
right.
female leader, yeah. And then you can yourself can start lifting people up, young people, young women, start helping them.
These are such great insights, Marja. I could talk to you all day, but in the interest of time,
Same here.
I would love to ask you, where can people find you if they want to read your book, if they want to learn more about your work? What's the best place for them to go?
Well, people can find me on my website. My name, Marja Wagenaar, is very hard to pronounce in English, but my website is leadershipint.com. So it's leadership with INT for international behind it, leadershipint.com. There you can find me. And my book has a very simple title. It's called The Leadership Book for Women. just the leadership book for women, and you can find it on Amazon.
Wonderful.
All over. Yeah. So that's an easy one. Yeah.
Perfect. So I will make sure those links are in the show notes for anyone who is interested. And thank you again, Marja, for being here. It has been such a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Well, thanks for having me, Kim. And yes, I hope, your listeners, our listeners today, we've at least done something today to lift them up. Because, and if we have added just a little bit today, that would have been great. And then go on, lift yourself up.
I have no doubt we have. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.